One of the biggest frustrations in our hobby, whether it's restoration, playing with old cars, drag racing, motocross racing, you name it, one of the biggest problems we have is getting kids involved, getting new people involved. And especially with kids, we've heard it, they just want video games. They don't want to get dirty. They're just lazy. They're this, they're that. But what if I told you my 12-year-old son just totally debunked this myth, and there's a way that we can actively encourage the next generation to get involved? If you've been around this hobby any length of time, you're probably familiar with that old guard kind of mentality. You know, the ones that are, if you don't know, you probably shouldn't be touching that. But what if that's exactly the thing that we need to get away from to encourage the future generations and even others our own age to get involved with the hobby? If you have someone come up to you and say, well, if you don't know, you shouldn't be doing that, and you're trying to ask a legitimate question, how does that make you feel? Let's be totally honest here, and if we treat our kids that way, they're never going to be able to get involved because they're not being allowed to get involved. And let's be honest, that kind of negativity just destroys creativity, whether it's us, our kids, or anyone around us. We need to totally avoid that and get that out of our lives because it doesn't serve anyone. The right way to do this is to encourage people to ask us questions. Encourage our kids to ask and say, hey, how does this work? Can you show me how this works? And take the time to work with them to learn about it. Now, on an interesting side note, the times I've actually taken to teach my son about things, it's actually worked out that I understand it better because now I'm teaching it and I'm trying to make sure that it's understandable. Well, how do we fix it? Well, here's what happened with my son and my father, his grandfather's 1973 Honda SL125 dirt bike. So to start with, we all have those projects that we start with good intentions of finishing, and life happens and it languishes for a prolonged period of time. My son had been seeing this motorcycle apart for quite some time, and he's actually asked me on a couple separate occasions, hey, do you think we could get that running? I said, absolutely. We got to make sure Grandpa's on board before we just haul off and start working on it. Once we got approval, okay, we didn't get approval. We just hauled off and started working on it. But this was actually the right way to get my son involved because this is the right sized project. This is a project that isn't overly complicated. This will take a little bit of time to actually do, and he gets to exercise his problem-solving skills. He gets to learn how to do it. And I tell you what, he actually took the bike from where it was. The seat was off, the gas tank was off, fuel lines weren't run, the carburetor had been replaced, so a lot of the stuff was already done. It just needed to be finished. And my son, he looked at this and said, I can put this together. And I'm cleaning the garage, doing other projects, and I'm watching my son put together this motorcycle that's been apart for a year. He didn't take it apart. He didn't necessarily know where all the parts were. But you know something? He figured it out. One step at a time, he's fitting things together, like wondering, is this how this works? The answer is yes. That is how that works. And he asked me a couple of questions, and I was able to respond, appropriately with, the right answer. He says, hey, I'm getting this put together. It doesn't seem to want to go. What am I missing? So we come over, we look at it, we problem solve together. I show him that it's okay to ask questions. By asking those questions, he now had a better understanding of how it's going to go together in the future. So coming back around to the right-sized project, if you hand a kid a 1950 Chevrolet truck, not a complicated vehicle by any means, but if it's just been dragged out of a field and he's got no prior experience, that's probably a bit overwhelming. And I'll be totally open and honest, I've got a project that's a bit overwhelming for me. I don't know where to start. It's no different than if you give that to a kid who's trying to get involved and say, here you go. That's a lot of elephant to eat. We need to right-size the projects so that way they can get involved. I mean, I've seen a lot of kids get involved with mini bikes, dirt bikes, go-karts, even fixing lawnmowers to sell, and that kind of stirs the entrepreneurial spirit to help them fund future projects. So it's best that we don't ever discourage that kind of thing and encourage them to learn and explore and learn how to do it right. We have a great opportunity to guide the future generation, and we need to make sure that we're guiding them correctly. So back to my son's story. As he's going along, he's putting it back together, asking a few questions, not many. And which shows me he genuinely seems to understand what he's doing, which is absolutely awesome. He's been out here in the garage working with me on my stuff and asking questions before, but this was his first real project that he tackled by himself. So after a couple hours of tinkering and putting this thing back together, he comes to me and says, I think we're ready to start it. I said, okay, let's hit it with some ether, some brake clean. Let's see if it's going to spark before we go too much further. So I hop on, give it a good healthy puff of the good stuff, and kick it. And it fires, it sparks, it runs. Granted, on brake clean, not well, but it runs, which gives me hope that we can pour gasoline in this thing and have it run like it's supposed to. I tell you what, seeing that kid light up when it fired off there for a brief moment, that was like one of the coolest things that I've actually ever seen. So that was really cool. So we loaded it up with some ethanol-free gasoline. We gave it, we rolled it outside so that we were not going to, stink out the garage, make a mess of things if there's a problem, all the normal stuff. Third kick. That bike fired to life and ran. It ran. After it's been sitting for who knows how many years, it's been a lot of years since that bike's been run. And here's another interesting fun thing. That's the same motorcycle that my dad taught me to ride when I was the age of my son. So here I am, one generation later, I'm teaching my son to ride the same motorcycle that I got to ride myself. So like so many things, like so many projects of our own, we need to make sure that we're right-sizing the projects. We can't give our son an entire car and expect him to be able to do it all himself. No, we need to make sure we're guiding, we're leading, we're there answering questions. We're leading by example. We're there to teach our kids how to work with these cars correctly. And in turn, they're going to get to bring others into the hobby too. By following the good example that we set, they're able to bring more people in. And another benefit of the right-sized project, everyone wants to say we live in this world of instant gratification. Right-sizing a project kind of allows our kids to be able to experience that. In the time that we have, we're able to do a project start to finish and see it through to completion and enjoy the results. I'm not going to say that's instant gratification, but being able to have a project that's correctly sized to see through and enjoy, that's really where things matter. And I'll openly understand that if I was putting that bike together, I could have probably done it in half the time that my son did. But that wasn't the point. We need to be patient with our kids so that way they're able to have the time to learn, to look at it, to figure it out, to troubleshoot through it. Speed isn't the key. Creating memories is the key. Creating good experiences is key. Being able for them to look back and say, yeah, I was able to work in the garage with my dad and we did these amazing things. That's what's mattering. So this motorcycle wasn't just a project of get it going. This was a project of fostering and growing the next generation to love these machines. And now I have the benefit of my sons coming to me asking, hey Dad, what's the next project? What else can we do with this motorcycle, your hot rods? What are we doing? What's the next project? So now I've got a son spurring me on, which is actually a lot of fun. So I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments. What are your thoughts about getting the next generation coming? Do you think I'm on the mark or do you think I'm way off my rocker? Go ahead and tell me in the comments. I can handle it either way. Let's talk. Anyways, guys, let's get out there in the garage. Let's work with our kids and go build some cool stuff.